Very good evening from Suffolk, where the top story on Live at 5 tonight is the hunt for a possible serial killer.
2 bodies have been found near Ipswich.
There's now 5 dead in close proximity. The body of Gemma Adams was found near here. Time in water destroys clues and covers up vital tracks.
It's the biggest inquiry Suffolk police have ever had to deal with, involving hundreds of officers and massive response from the public as well.
10 years ago, this was a town hunting a serial killer. Between October and December 2006, 5 women disappeared from the streets of Ipswich. All were prostitutes, all murdered. Steve Wright, the man responsible, was also their client.
I don't think many police officers in their 30-year career will experience an intensity of horrific murders over such a short period of time.
Winter 2006, the so-called Suffolk Strangler is murdering sex workers in Ipswich. As the killing spree continued, police tried to clear the streets he was hunting in.
Please stay off the streets. If you are out alone at night, you are putting yourself in danger.
But night after night, the women still came out. As hundreds of extra officers joined the manhunt, Steve Wright continued looking for victims. Women who worked in the red light district told me they're lucky to be alive.
He gave me £50, took me to a house I told him to take me to, told him to wait there, and of course I didn't come back out of this house.
What do you think would have happened to you if you'd got in the car?
I'd have been murdered like the rest of them, most definitely. He's a very big, strong man. I wouldn't have been able to stop him.
It was almost 8 weeks before he was caught.
He has been arrested on suspicion of murdering all 5 women: Gemma Adams, Tanya Nicol, Annalea Alderton, Paula Clennell and Annette Nichols.
Wright was given a life sentence. His crime sparked a new crackdown on street prostitution in Ipswich.
Steve Wright lived here on London Road, right in the centre of the red light district where many of the women worked. And following those murders in 2006, the authorities here vowed to wipe out street prostitution. So 10 years later, has it worked?
Part of the original team trying to eradicate street prostitution, Simon Alders now runs a rehab centre for addicts.
And here we have Claire, and Claire's been with us now for a few months.
Hi Claire, nice to meet you. All of the victims in 2006 had drug problems, so his focus was on getting women clean and off the streets.
I'd like to introduce you to Alan Caton, who's ex-detective inspector.
Hi, Alan.
At the same time, Alan Caton led the police in cracking down on curb crawlers, arresting more than 100 men in 2 years. A decade on, he says the impact is clear.
I would say it's been an overwhelming success. In fact, since 2008, there have been no reports of women working on the street as street prostitutes, and there have been no reports or men arrested for curb crawling offences.
What impact then do you think your strategy has had on street prostitution in Ipswich?
It's removed street prostitution from Ipswich.
That night in Ipswich, we drove around the old red light district to see if prostitution had really been eradicated. Certainly the large gangs of girls from 2006 were nowhere to be seen. But we'd heard reports street sex workers had never properly disappeared. The next morning I met Donna. She knew Steve Wright and his victims after selling sex here in 2006. She said women today are no safer.
We've been told by different people working in the town that there's no prostitution here. What do you think about that?
There definitely is. Where there's drugs, there will always be prostitution. This is Portman Road. This is the heart of the red light district.
Now?
Well, no, it was. But from a girl who I spoke to, who worked only last night, this is where she worked.
So a girl you spoke to last night said she was working here,
yes,
and getting business,
yes,
in Ipswich,
yes,
in the place where we're told that there is no street prostitution.
Yes.
And as far as you're concerned, how many girls do you think approximately are working?
4.
4 a night?
I think so. I've seen 4. I got approached within 15 minutes of touching this road.
What did they say to you?
Am I working? And I said no, which I wasn't doing. I was just going to score as I'd relapse the game.
Yeah. Do you think it's safer for prostitutes working now, though?
Definitely not.
Do you think that someone like Steve Wright could happen again? Yeah.
I think that they are more at risk now.
If Donna was right, the only change is that street sex workers have moved a few yards up the road since 2006.
So we decided tonight to come and have a look on the streets where we've been told that prostitutes are working here in Ipswich, up ahead of me there. And after about 20 minutes, we saw a girl standing on a junction. She was standing there for a fair while. We drove down past her, we pulled over, and she approached the car. Now, we then drove off, but we drove round again, pulled over again, and once again, she approached the car.
In the areas we saw evidence of street prostitution and curb crawlers, we didn't see any marked police cars. But the force here says it's committed to dealing with the issue and protecting the women involved. There are now fewer prostitutes on the street, but a quick look online shows many have simply moved to selling sex from flats instead. Now, rather than dozens, the internet allows hundreds of women to advertise. And being indoors means any violence is hidden. And if the girls work in pairs for safety, they're breaking the law. It's also claimed crackdowns just move the sex trade to other areas.
So I've come here to Norwich, which is about an hour and a quarter from Ipswich, and the reason we've come is because some of the former prostitutes we spoke to said the girls used to work between the two areas. And that's not the only connection. If you have a look out of the window here, that was the Ferryboat Inn, a pub which Steve Wright used to run.
As in Ipswich, Wright had chosen to live in the heart of the red light district. During his time as landlord, 4 prostitutes disappeared. Their murders remain unsolved. Street prostitution continues to be a problem here in Norwich. Evidence litters the ground of a nearby park. By night, outreach workers here are trying to keep women safe.
Condoms, which are very, very important when we're going.
Support is offered to around 30 sex workers, some of whom have come from other towns following crackdowns.
We have had women from Ipswich. We haven't had a huge number, but every so often there are women who have come here to work from Ipswich. So we know that there has been work done to try and eradicate sex work in Ipswich. I think the danger with that is that it can be very hidden, and we know both in Norfolk and Suffolk that there's a lot of women working indoor sex work.
The murders in 2006 didn't just change the way street prostitutes were dealt with in Ipswich, they influenced national police policy. Forces are now encouraged to treat the women as victims. Nikki Holland issued the guidelines and says pushing sex workers off the streets doesn't automatically make them safer.
We have got the opportunity to offer some protection and some safeguarding while they're on the street. We have no idea the scale on the internet. If you go into any UK city and put in sex work, and you will be inundated with adverts. The law as it stands in the UK at the moment, if women operate together, it's a brothel, therefore it's illegal. So women are, through the law of the UK, they have to operate alone because it isn't illegal to sell sex on your own. But clearly, depending on what your arrangements are, you're perhaps less safe.
So when prostitutes tell us they don't report crimes because they're scared of arrest or simply the police won't believe them, what do you say to that?
We would not arrest a sex worker who came in to report a crime. You can't be arrested for being a sex worker. You can only be arrested for prostitution in the street. So if a sex worker came forward to us and said, I'm a sex worker and I was subject of a crime, they would never be subject to arrest because they haven't committed an offence.
To see if crackdowns work, we travelled north to Rochdale. In 2006, the arrest of curb crawlers here was hailed as so successful it was due to be rolled out across the country. 10 years on, street prostitutes were obvious and easy to find. Rachel's been working here for years. In her experience, police crackdowns just move women to quieter areas where they're in more danger.
One night in particular, I moved to a quiet street down that end of Lincoln Street, where I was picked up by a man. He had a blue Ford van, and he told me to get in the van with him. I jumped in, and he says, don't make any sudden moves, don't reach for your phone or anything. He says, I'm going to get my own back on you for what another girl did to me.
So he was going to rape you?
Yeah, he did rape me.
When he raped you, did you ever think about going to the police? Was that even an option?
There is not much point in going to the police, giving a statement or telling anybody what has happened, because you were made to feel like it is your own fault.
152 sex workers have been murdered since 1990, and charities say 85% of street prostitutes have experienced violence. Because of what she does, Rachel says people don't care.
In a way, I see it as when I was a child, I used to get abused by men. And now that I'm grown up, I'm still letting the abuse carry on. The only difference is that now I get to charge them for it. And up to a certain extent, I do get a say in what I let happen to me and how long for. You can't get rid of the dirt from inside your mind, the guilt from inside your mind. You can only get rid of the dirt on the outside, the disgust on the outside.
So you regularly fear for your life?
Regularly, every single time you jump in a car, you do fear for your life and hope to God, keep your fingers crossed behind your back or in your coat pocket, hoping to God I'll make it through this one alive and in one piece.
10 years after 5 women were murdered in Suffolk, it's clear many street sex workers don't feel any safer. Some things have changed. Women are now meant to be protected, not prosecuted. But in reality, the fear of arrest means the majority still don't report violent attacks or rape to the police. And that leaves them vulnerable to predators like Steve Wright in the future.